Good morning and welcome to our March meeting. I would like to start with an approval of the minutes from last month. Do I have a first? Taylor Gardner in a second. Paulina. Okay, thank you. Today we have an exciting day. It's track and field on our campus, which is why some of us are a little more casual than we normally are. But all the kids are very excited, and I know that Coach Rod has spent a lot of time and effort into planning it for the kids. And Ms. Rawlings just walked in. Would you like to provide an administration update?
Well, I'll give you a little bit of an update. We
Great.
are just looking forward to spring break today and tomorrow. Yeah, it's a big day here with field day, so we're all super excited about that. We're now, when we come back from spring break, we're really working toward the end of this school year and the start of the next. So we'll be sending out parent input forms in terms of schedule. We'll be creating the master schedule, figuring out who goes where in rooms, creating the calendar for next year. And one thing that I would appeal to you guys for is I'll ask Kristen, you to be there, and anybody else you think should be there for our calendar meeting. Because we get together in March, early April, and we try to put all of the events on there we can, so we don't overdo a week or two next year. We kind of keep it spread out so that we keep instruction as the focus. So,
Great.
But we thank you guys as always for all the things you've done this year, the events you've hosted for us. They've been fabulous. The Glow Party last week was great. It was really fun. Yeah. All right, I think that's it.
Okay.
Okay,
Great.
any questions for me? We'll be back with you about fifth grade activities. How many of you have fifth graders? Yeah, we're working on exactly what that's gonna look like. We want to make it a lot more structured than it has been in the past. I think we know they do the walk and then they end up in the gym, but we want to do some sort of a ceremony acknowledging them where parents sit down and it's got some order to it. Okay? All right.
I love that.
Good. Okay, is it Pam now?
Well, we're going to do
No.
one quick thing.
One
and
quick
then-
thing.
Yes, Samantha, do you want to announce the slate?
I do. Okay, so the nominating committee, myself, Heather Davis, and Lauren Proud have been working hard, talking to volunteers who want to come and join our PTO board next year. And so I think what we've come up with is going to be really great. So for next year, we're going to have Kristen Murphy as president again, Carmen Beck as vice president, Taylor Gardner as treasurer, Chelsea Bass will be our new grade level coordinator. Forgive me if I mess up titles, guys. Okay, Ashlyn Beatty is gonna be our campus coordinator. Karina will be our, Karina Gamino will be our community relations. Paulina will still be in fundraising. Lauren Crouch will be our volunteer coordinator. And then Kelly Bucaro will be coming back on the board as our secretary. So we have between now and April 3rd. April 3rd is when we will officially vote on the slate. So you should come and meet them and you can vote. And it's going to be a really, really good year.
Yeah, okay. That's it. Now, for us,
We're
so
so
now we
happy.
have Miss Pam Sanchez. She is a assistant superintendent, and she's going to talk to us about school finance.
Yes, thank you all. Good morning, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to discuss this wonderful topic with y'all. I know it's early, but and then those that can watch it at their own leisure, that'll be great. It really is a presentation to let y'all know how schools are funded in Texas, but also where we stand as far as like Travis ISD and where we are with our funding. And so to understand school finance in Texas 101, I'm going to show this video real quick, and then we'll go through how it impacts Lake Travis ISD specifically. Let me start that. Sorry. There we go. Oh, what happened to the sound? Hang on. It was working a minute ago. So sorry.
Yeah, I never know when I'm sending
It
was working.
It was working earlier.
And critical
There it
to the
goes.
future
Let
of
me
our
start
state.
over.
Public education system in Texas is huge and critical to the future of our state. Smart planning and adequate funding are essential to making the system work for each and every Texan. Where does the money for public education come from? Let's break it down. First, think of funding schools like filling up a glass of water. The water in the glass represents the amount of money the Texas legislature allocates to educate each student. The water is sourced from two primary pitchers. The first is school district revenue generated by local property taxes. The second is state funds, which are generated by things like sales taxes, business taxes, and a portion of lottery proceeds. The water glass has the ability to shrink or grow. But many people are surprised to learn that the size of a Texas school district's water glass, or how much money is available for and spent on day-to-day school operations, is decided almost entirely by the state legislature, not school boards or superintendents. Funding formulas designed by the legislature provide school districts with general operating funds, most of which cover salaries for teachers and staff. Other parts of the funding formula are designated for specific priorities like career and technical programs, early childhood education, and more. While the state legislature decides how big the water glass is, how much money the state actually contributes is contingent on the amount of local property taxes generated by a school district. In our complex school funding system, when local property values go up and tax collections increase, local schools do not receive more funding. Instead, the state simply pours less water into the glass, even though more state funds were originally budgeted and intended for public education. But what happens if school district revenue generated by local property taxes is able to fill the whole glass? More water is poured than the glass size can hold. The state collects those overflowing funds in a separate water pitcher that holds general revenues for the state. So when a school district's property tax revenues go up, those dollars are not always reinvested back into our schools. Instead, the state uses its newfound billions to pay for other items in the state budget, or simply holds on to the extra revenue. That doesn't seem right. Money intended for Texas public schools should stay in Texas public schools. Now that you know the basics of how Texas schools are funded and that more money is available for public education, the next question is, are we adequately funding our Texas public schools? Proper funding is needed to prepare every student for a successful future. Texans have high expectations for our public schools, and that means our schools need to maintain their competitiveness with schools across the country. Let's dig a little deeper into how Texas stacks up and what is needed for our schools and our students to be successful. The per-student funding a district receives begins with a set dollar amount for each student. This is known as the basic allotment, which is set at $6,160. Schools receive additional funding based on specific student demographics and district characteristics. So when you add up all these different funding allotments, the average school district in Texas receives about $10,000 per student per year. How does school funding in Texas stack up to the rest of the country? Despite our thriving economy and dramatic population growth, Texas still spends $3,000 to $4,000 below the national average and ranks in the bottom 10 states in student funding. Our glass could be bigger. It should be bigger, much bigger. According to a Quality Counts report, Florida invests $1,100 more per student. Alabama invests $1,700 more. Louisiana, $3,700 more. Michigan, $4,300 more. And New York spends over $11,000 more per student than Texas. Even California, the only public school system larger than our own, spends $1,600 more per student than Texas. So, if school funding in Texas is like filling a glass of water, in Louisiana, it's more like filling up a jug of water. We are falling behind. Texas competes with these other states for qualified teachers, exceptional workforce programs, and college readiness. Without properly funded public schools, Texas cannot compete. We impede student success, and we weaken the future economy of Texas. Texas is not investing enough in our public schools, and the funding districts receive has to support a number of programs and needs. A good way to understand how school districts allocate their resources is to look at how each dollar is spent, or how the money is poured into our schools. Right off the top, over half of every dollar covers instruction and paying teachers, the backbone of our public schools. The next largest budget category is facility maintenance. Public schools have large physical footprints, and keeping the lights on, the water flowing, the grass cut, and more requires significant resources. Together, paying teachers and maintaining facilities accounts for about 2/3 of public school spending. The remaining third has to stretch a long way. About 15% of funds are provided for additional staff like nurses, counselors, principals, instructional coaches, and district administrators. Just under 10% goes towards basic student needs of transportation to and from school and student meals. Extracurricular programming, including the fine arts and athletics programs that inspire and cultivate student and family enthusiasm, accounts for about 3% of spending. Other needs, like IT infrastructure and school safety provisions, are covered by the remaining funds. This is how school funding supports and maintains well-running schools. As you can see, there isn't much room to trim. Our current school funding system doesn't account for inflation, and we've all felt the impact of rising inflation in our daily lives. Households and school districts have had to tighten their belts like the rest of us. With increasing costs, operational necessities, high expectations, and little room to trim, every public school student suffers when inflation rises without sufficient additional support. With less buying power, all schools, even those in property-wealthy districts, will struggle to retain high-quality teachers, maintain safe and efficient facilities, and preserve programs our kids and families care about. A strong Texas economy depends heavily on student success in college, career, and military readiness. Without proper funding, Texas will fall behind. Public schools are foundational for our state's success. Money matters in education. Tell Texas lawmakers we must do better, because investing in public education is investing in the future of Texas.
This makes me very nervous.
So, right? Now you know I don't sleep at night. No, I'm kidding.
So from that video, as you recall, the line, the chart showing inflation going up, which we've experienced about 22% since 2019. 2019 was the last time the legislature increased our funding per student. It went from 5140 to 6160 at that time, which was a huge jump, which was much needed, but it kind of geared us, you know, for what was coming, which we didn't know, which was the huge spike in property values as we've experienced here. And so that spending power back then, 2019, we're still getting that same funding, yet the spending is definitely died, the spending power of that dollar. And so that has been stagnant for 6 years, and going into each budget year, we're showing more and more of a struggle to give pay increases and those type of things, because those are reoccurring expenses that increase our budget every year, and has for the last 6 years. We've always given a pay increase for our staff just to retain them. But as the video showed, schools are funded based on 3 variables: number of students and attendance, so not in enrollment. We staff for enrollment, of course, but we need kids in seats, you know, in the campus to be able to count and towards funding. And then property values, of course, which is is determined by the appraisal district, not by the school district. And so those are given to us by the appraisal district, and then the school district tax rate we'll go into, but that's determined, partly because we have two components, one's for debt service and one's for, maintenance and operation. And I'll go into more detail there. So basically, again, daily student attendance is important and it's based on certain programs. So our funding is weighted. We have kids maybe in bilingual programs or career technical education programs that are weighted, special education. Those are weighted programs that give us a little bit more because those are, you know, a more costly program to offer our students. And then the state law, like I've said, it determines our M&O tax rate. We don't determine that, and we've been experiencing property tax compression, and I'll show you a slide where our tax rate in the school district is the lowest it's ever been since we began as a school district. And again, just to remind our property owners that we do here in Lake Travis ISD give the 20% local optional homestead exemption. So that takes 20% off your appraised value before it's taxed at the school district tax rate. Only one other district does it in Central Texas, and that's Lago Vista ISD. And that results in about 34 million staying local within the household to be used in our cities, you know, shopping centers, that type of thing. The school does not benefit from this at all, but our families do for sure, which then helps us out. As you saw, the spending of our dollar, which we'll go into, our programs are robust here, but it's only because of y'all's support. The PTOs, PTA, booster clubs, all of our club sponsors, those are what really help. Our community is very giving, and that really upgrades our programs and our students' experience in those programs. Here's the tax rate component. So we've got two buckets. They cannot commingle. This is a hard line in between these two tax rates that make up the total tax rate for the district. So currently, our day-to-day operations is our M&O tax rate. It's at 73.81 cents. And then salaries are paid out of there. About 80% of the budget is, 85% is that. Student services, instructional, but then we've got utilities and maintenance and property insurance, fuel for buses. This side of the tax rate is subject to recapture, and we'll go into that in a minute. And then the INS is like your mortgage. It goes to pay the principal and interest on the debt that we issue through the approved bonds to go build our new schools or renovate, upgrade our HVAC, buy buses, buy land for future school sites, those type of capital project expenses. And then here's our tax rate history over the last 9 years. Here's right before 2019, the legislature really wasn't doing tax compression or anything like that. And so our tax rate was pretty stable. Then the tax rate went down. The blue is our M&O tax rate. That's the majority of our tax rate. And then INS is here. And so you can tell when the legislature meets every 2 years because there's been tax compression. That doesn't bring more funding to the school district. All that does is help our property owners, which is great. We heavily support that. But the state then needs to fund more through the state budget for education. However, during this time period, property values have done this. So really the state hasn't had to add a whole lot into funding school districts because of recapture, and I'll explain that. But right now we're at $1.0656 on our tax rate. And then the average growth of our property values, again, you know, the years right here is when it started going up in 21, 22, coming out of COVID. 22, 23 was at almost 24% here in our district. Now it's kind of leveling off, and this year, for the budget that we're planning for 25, 26, we have been told by the appraisal district we could actually have a negative property value of maybe 5.5%. And then here's our student enrollment, because it's based on that as well. Again, right before COVID, we were a fast growth school. We were growing tremendously. COVID hit, we took a dip, and then coming out, it has now, we've been experiencing a decrease. And this is decreased mainly in the early grade levels, kindergarten and first. Not sure, and it's across the state, it's not just here in Lake Travis. This has been an experience where the younger students aren't coming into public education. They may be transitioning in later, but we have experienced that here. It could also be our interest rates, mortgage rates haven't come down, so it's not affordable to live here for the smaller new families, and so we'll have to continue to see that. Right now, our projection is for enrollment growth is pretty stable next year. Hopefully it won't take a dip again, fingers crossed. And then we are projected to increase a little bit. We do see homes going in and construction continuing, but it's just slowed down quite a bit. And then here's the water blast. Just wanted to show you where Lake Travis was. Again, the amount of money the state provides is based on local property taxes. When property taxes increase, our revenue increases, the amount of that the state has to pour in decreases. Lake Travis does not benefit from any property value increase. What it does is we're right here, we overflow every year. And so we do pay into, back to the state, our local property taxes. And so what that is huge funding across the state, because we do have some districts that don't have a huge wealth, right, or even enough to fund their water glass. And so that recapture goes to help fund, and we completely support equalized funding. Every student should have the best education as possible. But we're considered the property wealthy. Our average property value here in Lake Travis is above the state average. So we're considered property wealth. And so Lake Travis will send this year probably about 51 million back to the state in our local M&O tax revenues. Here's a chart of what that looks like. So for that same time period, 9 years, local tax revenue on the M&O side is the red bar. The blue is the amount of recapture we've been paying each year. And as you can see, here's that big spike when we went up 24% in property values. So you can imagine that year, our recapture jumped from 45 million to 71 million. So you can imagine that year, the state probably didn't have to fund a whole heck of a lot. And that is what has been building that surplus in the state budget. You hear there 2 years ago, the last session, they had 32 billion in surplus. That's after they funded everything. We did not get any new funding at that time. This year they have 24 billion sitting there that they could fund. And so we are keeping our fingers crossed that we'll get some relief. But right here, this year, we're gonna bring in about 139 million on the M&O side. We'll be paying out about 51 million. So overall, this average is about 37% of every tax dollar goes back to the state in recapture here in Lake Travis. So how's the money spent here? So this is pretty much what we saw on the video as a statewide average. 58% is in instruction plus another 2% in extracurricular. And again, extracurricular is heavily supported by our volunteers and our community. And so 2% of our maintenance and operation budget goes towards extracurriculars for athletics and fine arts. But it's definitely a more robust program for our students due to our donations and support from our clubs. And then you can see security, we have that in here, transportation, 4%, and again, maintenance and custodial is 11%. School district has we have 11 campuses, but then several facilities as well supporting those campuses. And so that's a big part of the budget as well. And all of that, just to note, was net of recapture. So this is truly the actual money we are able to spend on those items. So that's after recapture. Here's the dollar breakdown with recapture in it. So about 56 cents goes to salary and benefits for all of our staff. So we have about 1,400 staff. And then 30 cents goes back to recapture. And that leaves a whole 14 cents for campus and department budgets for supplies and fixed costs, utilities, fuel, those type of things. So there's not a whole lot we can trim as you can see, to make up for any deficit budgets we may be experiencing. So what are our realities here? Where are we here in Lake Travis in our budget? So last year at this time, we were preparing for the first budget workshop with the board. And for 24-25 budget year, we presented our estimates were about a $6.8 million deficit at that time. And that's because we had received no new funding. We went as a group, collaborated with our leadership team from campuses and departments and everyone. We looked at our special programs as well area. We were able to trim about 2.8 million in efficiency. So those were vacant positions that hadn't been filled, and we wiped them out of the budget because we didn't need them. That's what's listed here. Everybody contributed something. But as you can see, we cut some of the, not programs, we stayed away from students, but just some of the, maybe redundant materials, just any inefficiencies we could find, we cut from the budget. And so we were able to trim it to about $4 million deficit that the board approved in August to start this year. This is what happened this year, however. Once we got to October, end of October is our snapshot data for enrollment, and that's where our funding is based on. We had a decrease in enrollment instead from budget, about 300 students. So we experienced another decrease in enrollment from what we had built that budget on to have a $4 million deficit. Our property taxes decreased as also, and that's usually due to, we get certified values in July. However, by October, we knew protests, settlements, refundings, late filing exemptions, those type of things impact the amount of revenue we're gonna get in. And then we added back positions, some of the special services positions that were vacated because they were vacant. We realized after going through the student ARDs or IEPs, anything like that, we added back a few positions for student services. So the overall net impact you can see here, I know it's tiny, but we had a decrease in property values. However, we had an increase in recapture. The overall net impact was $2 million. So we're sitting at a $6 million deficit instead. The major impact was our decrease in enrollment. Enrollment is definitely critical for our budget every year. And then we do look at efficiencies. Our campuses are very efficient. We're not in a state like some districts in Texas that are closing campuses. So we're very lucky here. If we have like Lakeway Elementary, we're at 524 here, but we have other programs here. So truly we can centralize some of our special programs at campuses that may not have as many students as other campuses, but our middle schools are in good shape, and then of course our high school continues to be robust. So here's a cost of inflation since 2019, and as I said, our last funding was then, and inflation has increased 22% since then. We would have to have that same buying power back then with this cost of inflation, we'd have to see the basic allotment increase to about $7,500 which per student, which of course we're not going to see. But this is what has happened. Our fuel costs just for transportation have gone up almost 50% over that time period. Property insurance, those type of things are very expensive. Those keep increasing, and those are fixed costs that we can't really do anything about. And so we also have underfunded mandates. So the state, we have to be compliant with certain programs, and the state doesn't always fund those fully. And so special education here in our district, we have about 14% of our enrollment is special education identified. We receive weighted state funding from the state through the M&O side of our budget. And as you can see, we get almost 11 million from the state towards those services. However, our total expenses for salaries, supplies, services, assessment staff, professionals is almost 19 million. So we're underfunded by about 8 million this year alone. And then other mandates are dyslexia. We have to provide those services, of course, but the funding just isn't adequate. We're about 330,000 short. Transportation, believe it or not, is way heavily underfunded. Transportation is only mandatory. We have to provide transportation for special education students. We don't for anybody else. However, we do the 2 mile radius outside, and we get $1 per mile there. But as you can see, with fuel costs and maintenance and cost of repairs and stuff on our buses and staffing, we're about a deficit of 4.6 million. And then school safety. There is talk in the legislature to double this allotment, which would help us tremendously. But we receive right now about 270,000 to be able to have a police officer at every campus, to have the equipment they need. The training is expensive every year. So we spend about 1.6 million out of our budget towards that effort to be in compliance, because you have to do it, it's mandated, which we would do anyway. But that does definitely cause an increase in our deficit. So we're underfunded by about 6 million just in those 3 areas. And so that money comes out of general education, part of our budget, as well. And that's it. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Out of those 8 millions that you're planning to be underfunded this year, do you have an estimate of how much money all the clubs get all together? Like the PTOs, Lake Travis Education Foundation?
I can pull that information. I don't know it off my top of my head, but we have, all that money is set aside in another fund. It's not commingled with any of this, so
I know
it's
it
easy to
doesn't,
track.
but my question is,
It's a lot.
somehow we're making it work.
Yes.
So my question
Well,
is,
it's not filling the deficit
I know,
on this side,
I
but
know.
it definitely goes
it's
towards the
somehow
program.
helping, so.
Yes, absolutely. We are working right now with the Budget Advisory Committee along with our leadership team, leading up to the first budget workshop for next year, 25-26. We're projected, due to our property value decrease projection and stable enrollment, we're looking at a $7 to $7.5 million deficit for next year if we don't get any new funding out of this legislative session. And that's hiring freezes, that's everything frozen. So we're working hard again this year to try to find some efficiencies, do something, and several districts, around all the districts around the state are in deficit mode as well. But that is what we're working on right now, not knowing. We won't know from the legislature till the end of May if we're gonna receive any increase in funding, but we're trying to work proactively to identify areas where we could cut back or pause for the time being until we can get out of this deficit. Because that bottom line hits our fund balance level, which is our reserves, our savings account, basically. But that's what we use for cash flow until property value taxes come in each year. So from August to December, we pay in payroll and expenses about 10 million every month that we need to fund through our fund balance. And so we have to maintain an adequate level to be able to do that, and we don't wanna get in a critical period for the district where, yes, it is scary for sure. Any other questions? Yes.
I have a question sort of about the voucher
Mhm.
situation. So, all the ads are like, don't take money from our Texas schools. But I guess my question is like, if you were gonna enroll in private school, Lake Travis wasn't gonna get the funding anyways. So how does that really impact our school if that child wasn't gonna be in the seat to get the funding?
So it would
Regardless.
impact us if a child in the seat moves to private education.
Decreases our enrollment.
Right, it would decrease.
Well, right, but
our
then you don't
enrollment.
have the expense of that child, or you're saying it doesn't really, it's not.
It's not one for one,
Okay.
really. You don't wanna lose enrollment. You don't wanna be in a decreasing enrollment environment, because then you're gonna be closing schools and you're gonna be trying to, reduce, not programs hopefully, but you're trying to reduce your overall structure if we think there will be a flow of current students that would move to private education.
Okay.
Yes, and that could impact here in Lake Travis. Demographers have worked on a percentage coming out if vouchers do pass out of our enrollment because of that. because I think families here could possibly afford private education if they had a little bit of help to get, over that. Now, whether those schools have capacity to take everybody, we don't know, and it may take a few years for that infrastructure to catch up, so it may be 5 years that we'll see an outflow of students, but it could impact starting day one too. But that's a great question.
Do we receive federal funding?
We do, we receive federal funding for special education, and for Title I, so we have Lake Travis Elementary is our Title I campus. And so those students, we do get a little bit, we don't get a whole lot here in Lake Travis. In that, we do get more of the Idea B from USDE. And as you know in the news, they're looking at,
That was my question.
yes, and it
Not to
could,
get political.
no, but
Well,
it
I
could,
don't know
Looking
about
at doing what?
If
they're looking
Trump
to
gets rid of the Department of Education.
Right.
Oh, right.
and the federal funding attached to that may move to Department of Commerce or something like that. Would that funding decrease? It could, or be taken away.
So it could
It
make
Any
also,
good news?
I know.
Right.
So it does, and that's not to say this is, to be here for all
But
bad
who
news.
communicates with the legislators? Like, what can we do? I don't even vote, guys.
You can call your Congress, your
Yes, your rep.
every day, your rep, every day. I was gonna ask, like,
We've been
do
to the
we know,
Capitol.
like, if there's any, like,
This is
inkling
not
of if
in the
they're gonna
news,
do any
like-
kind of
I think
increase?
they
I mean,
will,
If they're sitting on that kind of deficit from alcohol, or, I
Um,
mean, they're
they're
surplus
surplus.
from or tax money,
Thanks for
like,
coming.
I think last time, since ESAs did not, vouchers did not get approved, they sat on it, but this time, I think they have the votes to approve some form of ESA, which then would release money for
And that's
all
education
districts.
savings account,
Yes.
AKA vouchers.
Vouchers, same thing, in my book. but-
Yeah.
But yes, we do, we've been to the Capitol 3 times, we have groups that go, on our website, if you go to About, on our homepage, go to About under the menu, and then Legislative Priorities. Under there is the video I showed you, but our legislative priorities, but it also says who represents me, and you can go find out your congressman, and it'll link to their phone numbers and contact information that represent us out here in the Senate and the House.
Is that Ellen Troxler?
Ellen
as well?
does, Vicki Goodwin does, and then on the other side is Donna Campbell on the Senate side.
Okay.
So, with the bond that we just passed too, cause like all the keyboard warriors are like, oh my god, pay the teachers more, we don't need the football and da. And I feel like people don't really understand like this part, which is great that you're doing all of this, but what can the bond money do to help with any of this?
So the bond helps us with getting the stuff on our maintenance and operations side. So maintenance, that could be, school districts used to fund buses and technology, computers, those type of things out of the maintenance general operating side. We're able to use bond funds for that. So our replacement cycle for all of our Chromebooks, our replacement cycle for buses, any capital type replacement like HVAC for maintenance can go on the bond side, and that helps us. And in the bond that were approved by our community, were line items for each facility for facility condition assessment, and that's money can be used to upgrade all of that. So that helps. It does not pay, it cannot go to salaries or anything like that. It has to be capital items. Yeah, with a long useful life type. And
That's
cost.
crazy, like we have to have a bond to replenish computers for students.
Cause we can't afford it on the
Yeah.
other side. Yes.
Do we have a bond coming up in the near future?
No, we had the bond, we had the facilities and technology propositions that passed, and then the next year athletics passed. And so we've only issued about half of our bonds right now, so we still have a whole nother, 400 million to issue. We haven't issued that because we don't wanna pay interest on it yet until we're ready to use them, but yes, it's over a 5-year type cycle is what we try to have here in Lake Travis, so we're not always asking voters for bonds.
Right.
Unless we're in a fast growth, then we would, but otherwise, we're pretty good. Yeah. Anything else? All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you
y'all's
so much
time.
for coming.
Yes,
Stop
you're
by.
welcome.
Can we share, is that video
You can share.
on,
It's
on
on,
the website?
yes, so it's
Okay.
under legislative priorities.
Yeah, that's
There's a
good
link
idea.
there.
Yeah, like we should
So just,
post that.
this is just a
I know.
question though.
Cause it's I have no
And
idea
you're-
that like.
No, I saw it the first time and I
We're
almost had a
behind
heart attack.
Alabama.
But that's the thing, we are behind
I
Alabama,
know,
but our
that's
kids
just
get better
fair.
education than Alabama. That's what I don't understand. I have a friend in
Great school
Alabama and their education is terrible.
Yeah.
How is it possible that they spend $3,000 more per student
Is it teachers?
and we get better education?
It's probably because we're heavily, well,
I think that our
It's a good
foundation
question.
was so good that we have very good like we were on a very good roll, and they have to catch up, and also the social like the demographics.
the
now.
The
demographic
demographics, yeah.
could play into that.
I
as
give
well.
more money to the school. So, so what do we do? Like,
It's all dependent on the legislature.
There's a really good app called, I think it's called Five Calls, or I forget what it is, but like you type in like your zip code and it'll give you your representative, all their information, their phone number, their email, and you can just like call, and it has a little script if you pick your like legislative topics that you're passionate about, like education's gonna be on there, and it'll give you a little script you can read, you can call and leave messages, like you can call every day and just be like, this needs to be a thing.
So we,
For a lot of
we
different
kind of need, like, to dumb it down for me, we need the cup to be bigger, so that recapture is less.
Yes, exactly, a restructure. They did an overhaul in 2019 of the funding formula, which, took into account, it decreased recapture, gave some tax, cause Governor Abbott's big push is property tax relief, right? Every year he's been in office, and it's been great.
Yeah.
But that's during property value growth, right? So it hadn't necessarily helped, our pocketbooks, but yes, it would have to be a restructure of that formula on the recapture to continue to give equalized funding, but not be so weighted on property tax that was intended for public education, no matter where it is. Yes, we'd like to keep it in our community, but, if it's going to another school, okay, it's still helping public education students. Where does that money go? What are they spending it on? And that's the transparency that we're having a hard time with. And one of our legislative priorities is tax transparency. Where is that extra money going? Because we know all the schools are fully funded. Where's our recapture dollars going? And it's going to other things in the general fund for the state.
thank you so much. I gotta
You're
go set
welcome.
up.
Thank you,
Have the
Paulina.
top one.
It's scary again.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I know it
Anything else? I appreciate y'all's
Thank you.
attention
is.
and
Yeah,
help
I
with
wish
this.
everybody could hear you.
Me too.
Like, oh,
I know,
Training's
I know.
yeah.
All
You're like,
right.
I know, I do this every day.
Okay, we have one more.
Wait a minute, do you want me to stand up or just?
You can
Just,
I'm gonna.
you want me to stand up? Is it better?
Right here, yeah, let's go.
Can we stand up? Right here?
Yep.
All right, y'all. And in the Mustang Social is coming up. We have 23 days until this amazing event. Tickets are still available. Please get them while you can. We have raffle tickets. We have a beautiful purse that we're raffling. We're gonna have, it's April 4th, from 6 to 11. We're going to have cocktails, casino, for the cocktail hour, and then it's going to be a full dinner, dancing, live and silent auction. We've got some amazing live auction items, a puppy, and some vacations, and some destinations and a home here locally or on the beach. So we're putting that on social media. So take a look and see these amazing items. We're gonna have a great silent auction. If you can't attend the event, silent auction will also be able to do if you're not attending, so you can still get in the fun there. We're having an event tonight. It's a gift card drive, but it's also a pre-parent happy hour. Mingle with your friends, get excited. It's at the Gramercy from 6 to 8. We're gonna start our Roaring 20s vibe tonight, and we're gonna continue through April. So please get excited. Let anyone on the board, myself or Marina or Joe, know if y'all have any questions, and we hope to see all of y'all there. The fundraising focus, this is great. I didn't know if I was able to share this. We are looking at, we are going to be doing the closest basketball court to the playground. It's just a raw concrete with basketball baskets. We're going to sport court it. That's what we're raising money for, is to put an amazing coat on it. It actually like cushions it, makes it like for shock absorbent, colorful, and putting a shade on that as well to protect our children from the sun, because it does get hot here in Texas. So that is what we're raising all of our money for the gala, silent live auction. So please help, because that will help every child in the school. So, all right. Thank you.